Welcome to the first episode of the second season of the Up Close podcast. And thanks to all of you who have encouraged me and the NEA Foundation to continue with this endeavor. Throughout this upcoming season, you can continue to turn to the Up Close podcast for honest and open conversation about the present and future of public education. Today, I'm excited to talk with an expert in grassroots organizing and Black parent-led movements in public education. Natosha Daniels has spent 15 years in public education as a science and special education teacher, technology coach, and administrator, and she presently is a doctoral student in the Education Policy and Planning program at the University of Texas in Austin. And she is the Chief Systems Navigator for the Round Rock Black Parents Association in Texas as a mother of three. The foundation, the NEA Foundation, first learned about Natosha's passion for equity and justice in public education as we learned about the work of the Round Rock Parents Association, which has fought against book bans and worked with teachers on an equity-focused design thinking project, and so much more, which we'll delve into in just a few minutes, as well as Natosha's research pursuits and focus on collective grassroots organizing and Black parent-led movements, with the aim to shift power structures and education policymaking toward the goal of racial equity in children's educational experiences from early childhood to 12th grade educational systems. So Natosha is a wellspring of knowledge when it comes to education justice, policy, and activism as a parent advocate, as an educator, as a doctoral student of shifting power structures and education policy making. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Natosha to Up Close today. Natosha, we welcome you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's so nice to be here.
It's really nice to have this opportunity to speak with you for these few minutes, Natosha. You know, we want to hear a lot about, I'm sure our listeners have been intrigued by the introduction of you and your work with Round Rock. But first, let's set the stage for that discussion. I'd like to know if you would be willing to share with us your journey as an educator and what inspired you to be an advocate and an expert on movements and advocacy related to public education.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So I graduated college and I went into social work and it wasn't my thing. I was working for the Department of Family and Protective Services and it was overwhelming. And one of my coworkers was like, you should try teaching. Like, I just left the classroom. It wasn't my thing, but you'd be suited for it. And she was right. As soon as I went in, I was in love. Well, after the first year, the first year they just throw you to the wolves. For any of the teachers, you know, your first year is always rough. But, and that's the thing, like, I remember my first year, the teachers told me the kids are going to make you cry by the end of this year. And ironically, it wasn't the kids. It was the adults. Like, I loved being with the kids, so much. And it was just the systems, right? And I think that's the through line as to how I got here today is as I moved on in my education career, as I moved into different positions and moved up, I realized that policy was the issue. And like the more I moved up, I was like, well, it's district policy. No, it's state policy. No, it's federal. Like the higher you move up, the more you realize the implementation of policies. First, they're being written by people that have never taught. And second, the implementation is carried out in a variety of different ways. And usually the people at the table are not people that look like me or my children. So even like when it's not intended to be, it is harmful. So that's why during COVID, I was part of the Great Resignation. I left and I got into a PhD program at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm in my third year and hopefully next semester I will defend my proposal for my dissertation.
Wonderful. What is its emphasis, if you don't mind me asking?
Looking at Black parents and how they are navigating educational systems. And really, it's more than navigation. There's this piece by Lynn Posey Maddox. She's at Wisconsin, I believe. And she talks about how when we talk about Black parents and school choice, it's not a choice, it's a negotiation. And we're always negotiating the lesser of the evils. And what I'm hoping to do is a participatory action research project with other Black parents as they really like a collective autoethnography of exploring how they have navigated and negotiated for their own children. And so that's what I'm looking into right now.
And so how does that connect to the work you're doing with Round Rock? And can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Sure, yes. Round Rock Black Parents Association, and I have to preface that with a caveat because we are changing our name to the Black Parents and Families Collective as we serve more people than just Round Rock. So we thought we'd just encompass that in our name. But BPFC for short. We are a Black parent advocacy organization. We use center education, but we understand that education policy is all the other policies. You cannot have education policy without housing policy, without food security. Like it is all the things, and schools are left to take care of many problems and not funded to do so. So we are a Black parent organization. We seek to unify, mobilize, and uplift Black parents. We unify through, like here in Central Texas, where we're located, we are really spread out. We make up 9% of our school district. So we have a lot of unifying events, like just to bring people in, like barbecues, like just, we did family yoga in the park, like just beautiful, just bringing in the whole family, right? And then we mobilize because we know that things pop off in schools all the time. And we need Black parents to show up for each other, with each other in a collective sense so that districts understand that we have knowledge that you didn't think we had. And then we uplift by providing opportunities to put people into positions of power. So Black parents specifically, we know that we can beg people all day long to hear us, but until we occupy that seat, things won't change.
Wonderful. Occupy that seat indeed. And so as you occupy, what have been the points of emphasis in your work?
In my work in the organization or as a scholar or both?
Both.
Well, they kind of overlap, right? Like I think the whole reason I'm studying Black parents and grassroots movements is because of the work that I do. Primarily education, because Round Rock Black Parents was founded I was not there for the founding, if you don't mind if I tell this kind of story.
No, please.
I was tasked by my principal to show up at this meeting, and it was like a needs assessment for the district. And it was a bunch of white people sitting in a room asking what Black children needed. And it was wild to me to watch people talk about us without us. And so later, like they formed this equity task force, and a group of Black parents showed up at the board meeting, and one of them sat next to me and she was like, "How many Black people are in this?" And I was like, "Well, there's a couple of us." She was like, "I saw it on Twitter and it's all white folks." And I was like, yeah, it's largely like people in central office. And so that was my first foray into Round Rock Black parents. It was me joining them, like sitting around a dining room table and just organizing and talking about things that need to change, shifting power. Like, how do we shift power? How do we move levers? And I don't know, just the journey has been beautiful with us. And that emphasis on education has always been front and center. And that's what I carry over into my work as a scholar, which it's weird calling myself a scholar, but I guess I am since I'm doing this work. But yeah, I'm always centering Black parents, Black families, Black children in my work, because I think we are often talked about in a certain way, especially like as I'm reading articles, like right now, a lot of them have an urban context. And when you break down and do the numbers, the majority of Black people live in the suburbs. And there's not a whole lot of suburban literature out there. So that's what I'm like digging into now, what I'm writing about now. And also when you talk about Texas, people don't really think, yes, Dallas, Houston, right? But they don't really think about Black people when you think of Texas, but there are more Black people in Texas than any other state. California is second to Texas, and then I think Georgia after that. But I think it's like where we are at a critical moment in time where things are happening, and that has to be my focus. Like that feels right for me and my kids and my family and our community.
Well, you certainly are a scholar, and it is your scholarship that has attracted us to invite you to Up Close today, because your voice and what you are doing is so very necessary at this time. And in that context, I'd like to ask how you have made sense of or think about what's happening in terms of the anti-public education movement that's going on across the country.
So what first comes to mind when I think about what's going on right now is my homegirl, Octavia Butler. I think about Margaret Atwood. I think about these things that we once thought were dystopian that are now like here in our face. And I think like right now, people feel emboldened to say the quiet part out loud. I think it should be concerning to everyone who has children in public education, that especially like I speak a lot from Texas context because that's what I know the best. But I see a defunding of education as a means to, I think when you look at how capitalism operates, especially in this state, I feel like we are headed for like another New Orleans where charter schools have taken over. There's private interest in public education. And I think for families, especially marginalized families, because marginalized identities make up the majority of the state and many states around the nation, I think it's no longer acceptable to keep going and pretend it's not happening. I think we have to be involved in school board elections. We need to be involved in down ballot voting. And it's difficult, right? It's difficult for me to say that because I think about voter suppression laws. I think about gerrymandering. I think about like, it's not as simple as like just going to the ballot, right? I think there's so many dimensions to it. It's such a nebulous problem, but I think we can start with being aware of what's actually happening and confronting it head on. I think it's a dangerous future that we're headed for if things continue the way they are.
And here at Up Close, we are always wanting to lift up the voices of those who find hope yet in a dark hour, especially as pertains to the preservation and the furtherance of public education and all of our public institutions, so much at peril right now. So when you think about what change is possible and the type of work that you've had opportunity to do, Natosha, where are you finding that hope and what is fueling the path forward as you think about the change that you envision is possible?
So there is a book by Robin G. Kelley. It's called Freedom Dreams. And I think when I think about the situation that we are in, right, it is very hard to stay hopeful. But when I think about what freedom dreaming actually does, by allowing us to think outside of constraints, allowing us to think about building worlds that were never possible, like that we never thought possible, I think there's hope in that. And I think Miriam Kaba, she wrote, "We do this till we free us." And in that book, she talks about hope being a discipline. And it's very hard for me, right? Like, especially when you're in the throes of being like at the Capitol, right? And experiencing extreme racism as you're there, right? With long guns around you. Like it's hard to have hope, but I think like I always have to go back and remind myself that hope is not something you can just wish into, like it is a practice. And I think we do have to remind ourselves that hope is a practice, and also that we have to be led by our dreams. And some of us, like when I think about how education systems have conditioned us to squash our creativity, some of us, it's hard for us to dream because it's hard for us to think outside of what already is, which is why I think there's so much power in our youth today. When I ask my child, I asked my 9-year-old back when she was like 6 or 7, I asked her to freedom dream a school. And it was the most beautiful vision of like animals. And she was like, Mom, I won't have to raise my hand. There's a slide. There's like, you're in a tree house. And she said, Mom, when I have anxiety, I can just go and sit and meditate. And when I'm ready to come back and learn, I can learn. Like just I don't know. It was just a beautiful vision. And then my other 2 kids who are older, when I asked them about their freedom dreams of what a school would look like, it was so sad because they thought within the walls of a classroom. Whereas my daughter was like exploring these trees and like being outside and not even having a building. You know what I'm saying? Like it was,
Yes.
I think that we need to, in our hope as a practice, also practice what it is to dream, because it is those dreams that are going to help us build a new future through policy.
Absolutely. And we believe very much here at the NEA Foundation that hope is also a consequence of collective action. And that's what's so inspiring to us day to day. And as you have, I see you nodding, people can't see as I can, but everyone, Natosha is vigorously nodding. And so, I know that Round Rock is just one of many groups around the country that are seeking to exercise voice and agency and play a more direct role and find a more direct opportunity for parents and students to dream together a future for public education. As you think about those from whom you take inspiration around the country, when you think about those models of collective action, are there those that you look to particularly, Natosha? Are there exemplars I know you want to lift up Round Rock. That's a given. But alongside Round Rock, as our listening audience is learning about where there may be opportunities for them.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Like, even like, yes, I want to lift up Round Rock, but also like, we work with other Black parent organizations like right down the street. We have Black Families of Hutto. We have Black Mama's Village in Austin. Like there's so many of us. There's parents of Black children in Canada, in Toronto. I attended a few of their meetings, and when I tell you they are a powerhouse, and I don't know if this podcast is listened to internationally, but they welcomed me as I came from the United States, and they were willing to offer any information they could give. So, and I think they now have chapters, in 2 or 3 different states here in the United States, the parents of Black children. But I think we have also collaborated with Oakland Reach. Like we've reached out to them.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Why is my mind is drawing a blank? But there's so many right now. Oh, there's one in Arizona. What is the name of? I cannot remember their name.
Can I tell you that I think the good news in what you're saying is that there's not one, but rather there are many, and that is to be celebrated. And what I want to do, Natosha, right now, I think I'm just going to exercise a little prerogative. I don't want to put you on the spot per se, but as you are holding the mic. So what is, with all that you know and with all that is discouraging and all of the darkness that has surrounded some of the dialogue around public education in this era, you as an organizer clearly do have hope and you clearly do have a dream. And so if I might ask for the privilege of hearing and you sharing with the listening audience, what's one parent's dream? I'm not asking you to be a representative of parents across this country, but just what's your dream of freedom in school?
Ooh, that's heavy. And I think if you ask any Black parent, that's heavy.
I know it's heavy.
Yes. Do you have children?
I do. Well, I have many children, but they're not my own.
Yes.
They're just children I love because I love children.
Yes. Oh, and that speaks to that other mothering that we do. Everybody's our children.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, like when I think about the organizing work that we do, right? And my freedom dream, I don't want to have to do this work. I want to be home and be a mama like other people get to be. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to have to split my time. And I want my kids, I want the freedom that my baby had when she was freedom dreaming. I want her to keep that all the way until she's an adult. I want my children to feel whole and loved in school. And contrary to how some people believe, I don't want to be in your classroom talking to you about my child's accommodations or whatever. Like, I don't want to be there. I know you tired of seeing my face, but I don't want to be there. And I need you to know that. I want in my dream, I want a collective sigh. That's a deep one. Can I ask you though, what is your freedom dream?
Oh, thank you so very much. My freedom dream is that every child in this country has access to and available to them the highest quality public education that could possibly be extended to them, that they find joy in learning in their classrooms, and that they understand that learning can happen anywhere and everywhere, and where everyone sees that they have a stake in this nation's future by supporting children and understanding that their education is a part of their responsibility as a good citizen and participant in this democracy. And I mean, so much more, right? I mean, to me, don't get me started. That's just
you hit on something right there.
That's the tip of the iceberg. And freedom, the freedom to learn, the freedom to be yourself, the freedom to have your culture understood and celebrated and respected, not as some foreign thing, but as just a beautiful part of what comprises community. And that is respected in every aspect of how a school functions and how a community supports its school. You may know that we are big proponents at the NEA Foundation of the community school strategy. And therein, because we believe that education is everybody's responsibility and that everybody has a role that they can play in furthering education. And part of my dream is that is realized through people feeling welcomed and engaged and responsible for what's happening through their public schools and through everything that surrounds public schools. And again, you are the guest, so I'm going to stop myself right there. But while we're in this space, Natosha, you are an inspiration. And so, there may be parents who are listening to this podcast who, similarly have points of discouragement at times and disappointment, but who have not yet found the opportunity or taken the opportunity to exercise their voice to improve their school. And so how would you inspire and encourage another parent to join with you wherever they may be in this country in this struggle for freedom dreams in education?
Yes. And I'm so glad you asked this question, because I think of a couple of parents in our group who had that same sentiment. They were like, well, I don't have a degree and I don't have these credentials and I don't speak this way. And I think the first barrier is the internal one, right? It's the internal one of, yes, I belong here. Yes, I deserve to take up space. And it's a contrary to everything you've been told. It is an understanding deep within yourself that this is my America too. And I will be heard. So I think once you get over that internal battle, the second step is familiarizing yourself with the way your state works, the way your local systems work. And if you're not familiar with that, like, you don't have to do that all on your own. I'm going to call back to what I said before. You reach out to community. Even if you don't know a whole lot of people in your community, you reach out to the one person you do know, because I guarantee they know a person and they know a person, because that's how community works, and it's beautiful. But I think that's all I got.
Excellent. What about the policy dimension? I mean, you earlier said that one of the things that you saw when you looked, you began to understand that it all begins with policy. And you talked about your progression from understanding that it's local policy, no, it's state policy, no, it's federal policy, no, it's all of the above. Someone hearing that might say, well, I don't have that kind of background to get involved in policy. That just sounds so daunting, so overwhelming. How would you encourage those, who know that essentially that is going to be a part of the work and yet you can do it?
So I don't want to oversimplify things, but let me tell you how we have AI now. You have Bard, you have ChatGPT. Policy is difficult to break down. So as long as you know where to go, as long as, actually this morning I was in the Texas Education Code skimming through for something that I thought was very inequitable in our district. And I sent an email about it, but I checked state policy, I checked federal policy, I checked local policy, and then I sent them an email on how to find it. But I put the receipts always. I think
I love it.
It's a powerful thing to be able to dig through policy. And now we have tools such as AI where you can say, where can I find this in the policy? And it will give you the exact subsection. I think we use that. We utilize that as parents. You might not have that background, but you utilize your tools and you always have receipts. That's the number one thing I can say to parents, is that you document everything. You put everything in writing so that when push comes to shove, you have a trail to back you up.
Well, that is a lot. And we are so grateful. Natosha, you are a wonder. And I hope that there are many who have been listening to this podcast who have gained a glimpse of what is possible because of your voice exercised here today and otherwise. I'm really grateful for your candor. You're sharing your true heart, your true story with us and explaining that it is a learning journey, but it is a journey that is so critically important for all of us who care about our children across this country and what kind of experience they're having in the schools, as well as what kind of outcomes those schools are turning out. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And to our listening audience, thank you so much for tuning in once again to the Up Close podcast. This is, again, the first of our second season tapings. And so we're really excited about that. We have a lot of great things in store. We've got a lineup of speakers. You're not going to want to. We have a lineup of guests you're not going to want to miss. So stay tuned and share with your friends this podcast. Make certain that they, of course, I know you've already subscribed, so make certain they also subscribe wherever they get their podcasts.